Charles Barkley was never the hero inside every locker room, and that truth hurts more than fans realize. When you talk about greatness, people throw his name around like he was untouchable, but inside the walls of the Houston Rockets, it wasn't admiration that filled the air. It was tension, it was frustration, it was exhaustion. This isn't about highlights or MVP chants. This is about what it felt like to stand beside him every day, and not everyone enjoyed that experience. Hakeem Olajuwon never liked chaos, and Charles Barkley brought chaos everywhere he went. Hakeem believed in discipline, calm execution, and quiet dominance. Barkley believed in loud words, louder opinions, and emotional explosions. The difference in temperament created cracks from the beginning. Hakeem felt basketball was about respect and control. Barkley made it about ego and reaction. That contrast built silent resentment. Clyde Drexler saw it differently, but ended up in the same place emotionally. Clyde valued rhythm and team flow, but Barkley disrupted it with constant outbursts. Practices would stop because Charles had something to say. Games would shift because Charles lost his temper. Clyde hated how attention always followed Barkley's mouth instead of the scoreboard. For him, winning required focus. Barkley often replaced focus with noise. They hated his temper most of all. One bad call from a referee and Barkley would erupt. One missed pass and he would glare at teammates like they betrayed him. Hakeem believed emotions should stay controlled, especially in pressure moments. Barkley treated emotion like fuel and fire at the same time. It drained the locker room's energy. It made stability impossible. Hakeem often felt that Barkley talked like a superstar, but didn't always perform like one. There were nights when Barkley's defense disappeared, nights when conditioning became a question, nights when effort felt selective, yet his voice remained the loudest in the room. That imbalance bothered Hakeem deeply. Leadership, in his eyes, had to be earned every possession. Clyde disliked how Barkley dismissed structure. Coaches would design systems, and Charles would freelance. Plays broke down because he wanted isolation. Defensive assignments slipped because he gambled. Drexler believed basketball was about precision. Barkley treated it like a personal battlefield. That selfish edge didn't sit well with a veteran who had already sacrificed for championships. Hakeem also felt Barkley's mouth created unnecessary enemies. Media interviews turned into headlines. Teammates became public targets. Opponents were insulted openly. Hakeem preferred silence and preparation. Barkley preferred confrontation and entertainment. That difference made Hakeem question whether Barkley truly prioritized winning. Sometimes it felt like he prioritized being heard. Clyde couldn't stand how Barkley dismissed mistakes with jokes. After tough losses, Charles would laugh it off publicly. Drexler saw that as disrespectful to the grind. Losing hurt Clyde deeply. It demanded reflection and correction. Barkley's humor felt like avoidance. That gap in mentality widened their frustration. There were moments when Barkley's body language hurt the team. Slumped shoulders, complaining gestures, arguing with officials while the play continued. Hakeem valued composure under pressure. Barkley radiated volatility. It affected momentum at the worst times, and veterans noticed those details. Hakeem believed true greatness required sacrifice. Barkley demanded the ball, demanded touches, demanded attention. Yet defensive rotation sometimes lagged. Conditioning sometimes fluctuated. Commitment sometimes felt selective. That inconsistency was hard to ignore, especially for someone like Olajuwon, who built his career on discipline. Clyde felt Barkley never truly accepted being second or third option, even on a roster with legends. His ego stayed dominant. Drexler sensed competition inside the team instead of unity. Barkley wanted to prove himself constantly. That internal battle distracted from the external goal. Championships require harmony, not internal wars. Hakeem also hated how Barkley challenged authority openly. Coaches were questioned. Systems were doubted. Adjustments were debated mid-game. Olajuwon respected structure deeply. Barkley respected his own instincts first. That difference in philosophy caused friction that never fully disappeared. Clyde believed Barkley's trash talk sometimes crossed lines. It wasn't strategic. It was personal. Opponents played harder against them because of it. Games became emotional battles instead of tactical ones. Drexler hated unnecessary complications. Barkley seemed to invite them, even in the locker room. Barkley's dominance of conversation exhausted teammates. He filled silence with opinions. He rarely filtered thoughts. Hakeem valued peace and mental clarity. Barkley brought storms into quiet spaces. Not every star wants that energy around them. In the end, Hakeem and Clyde didn't deny Barkley's talent. They hated the volatility, the ego, the temper, and the constant noise. They believed he could have been greater with discipline. They believed the team could have been stronger with less chaos. And sometimes, talent alone isn't enough to earn love inside a locker room. There were nights when Hakeem Olajuwon felt Barkley confused passion with leadership. Charles would shout, wave his arms, and demand urgency. But leadership is more than volume. Hakeem believed presence should calm a team, not shake it. Barkley's intensity often felt unstable. Instead of building confidence, it created tension. The younger players watched and absorbed that chaos. worse, and chaos spreads faster than discipline. Clyde Drexler also hated how Barkley questioned teammates publicly. If someone missed a rotation or failed to box out, Charles would let everyone know. Not privately, not constructively, loudly. Drexler believed correction belonged behind closed doors. Barkley turned frustration into performance. That difference built walls between them. Hakeem saw Barkley's conditioning as another problem. There were stretches. When Charles looked heavy, slower than expected, Olajuwon trained like a monk, strict and precise. He expected that same commitment from stars beside him. When Barkley didn't match that standard, it felt disrespectful. Greatness demands sacrifice. Every day, Hakeem felt Charles picked and chose his moments. Clyde hated the emotional swings. One quarter, Barkley was unstoppable, aggressive, unstoppable in the paint. The next quarter, he was arguing, distracted, and careless. Drexler valued consistency above all. A team cannot depend on mood. A team cannot rely on temper. Barkley's volatility made trust fragile. Hakeem believed defense revealed character. Barkley's defense, at times, disappeared. Slow rotations, late contests, complaints instead of recovery. Olajuwon took pride in protecting the rim and anchoring the system. Watching Charles conserve energy on that end angered him. Defense is effort, not talent. And effort is non-negotiable. Clyde also felt Barkley loved headlines too much. Interviews became dramatic. Comments turned controversial. The spotlight followed him everywhere. Drexler preferred quiet respect earned through play. Barkley seemed comfortable being the villain. That constant noise distracted from the mission. Winning should speak louder than personality. Hakeem resented how Barkley sometimes ignored structure late in games. Plays were drawn carefully, assignments detailed clearly, then Charles would improvise. A forced shot, a rushed move, a gamble that shifted momentum. Olajuwon believed in discipline under pressure. Barkley trusted emotion over execution. There were practices where tension filled the air because of one remark from Charles, a sarcastic comment, a public jab, a challenge thrown too sharply. Clyde saw teammates withdraw instead of respond. Chemistry cracked under those small moments. Barkley rarely noticed the damage, but veterans always do. Hakeem felt Barkley wanted to be respected without fully respecting the process. Respect comes from consistency, preparation, and humility. Charles offered brilliance, yes, but not always balance. Olajuwon's game was rooted in craft and patience. Barkley's was fueled by fire and impulse. Fire burns bright, but it also burns out. Clyde believed Barkley carried frustration from earlier failures. The hunger to prove himself never left. That chip on his shoulder turned into aggression toward everyone. Drexler understood ambition. He didn't understand turning teammates into targets. Internal conflict weakens external strength. Hakeem hated the visible arguments with referees. While the play continued, Charles kept talking. Points were conceded. Momentum slipped. Olajuwon valued composure during adversity. Barkley reacted before thinking. In playoff basketball, that difference becomes costly. Discipline wins tight games. Clyde felt Barkley never fully embraced shared sacrifice. Everyone had to adjust roles. Everyone had to accept fewer touches, but Charles still demanded control in crucial stretches. Drexler believed in shared responsibility. Barkley leaned toward personal validation. That imbalance created quiet resentment. Hakeem also noticed Barkley's defensive rebounding dominance sometimes masked lapses elsewhere. Numbers looked strong, but positioning and rotations weren't always sharp. Olajuwon saw the deeper details. He studied the small breakdowns. Barkley focused on impact moments. The gap in approach widened tension. Clyde hated how Barkley dismissed criticism quickly. If coaches suggested adjustments, Charles would push back instantly. Scottie Pippen's greatness is often measured next to Michael Jordan, but there was a season when the shadow disappeared. Dennis Rodman has said that people forget how dangerous Scottie became when the spotlight was fully his. The 1993-94 season wasn't about surviving without Jordan. It was about redefining identity. The league expected Chicago to collapse. Instead, Pippen rose. That era revealed who he really was. Steve Kerr remembers walking into training camp after Jordan, retired and sensing uncertainty everywhere. Cameras waited for failure. Critics predicted mediocrity, but Scottie never looked shaken. He carried himself like the responsibility belonged to him all along. Leadership didn't feel borrowed. It felt natural. Dennis Rodman always respected players who could guard every position. Scottie did it effortlessly. Point guards, forwards, even power players struggled against him. Without Jordan scoring 30 a night, Pippen had to do everything: score, facilitate, defend, command, and he delivered. That season, Pippen averaged over 20 points while anchoring the defense. Kerr said what impressed him most wasn't the scoring. It was the control. The offense flowed through Scottie's decisions. Every possession felt calculated. He wasn't chasing numbers. He was commanding rhythm. Rodman believed that Scottie's defensive intelligence peaked during that era. He anticipated passing lanes before plays developed. He rotated faster. He communicated louder. Without Jordan's gravity, Pippen became the emotional engine. Defense mirrored his intensity. Steve Kerr has said that Scottie handled pressure differently than Michael. Jordan attacked pressure aggressively. Scottie absorbed it strategically. He thought through moments instead of overwhelming them. That contrast defined the Jordanless season. It was more methodical, but still powerful. The Bulls won 55 games. That year, many didn't expect even 45. Rodman points out that winning without your franchise icon changes perception. Scottie didn't just keep the team afloat, he elevated it. That season forced critics to reconsider his value. Pippen finished third in MVP voting. Kerr remembers how that recognition felt overdue. Scottie wasn't just a sidekick anymore. He was the centerpiece. Every defense schemed for him. Every arena targeted him. And he responded consistently. Dennis Rodman has always said that Scottie's versatility is unmatched. In that Jordanless year, it became undeniable. He initiated offense like a guard, rebounded like a forward, defended like a specialist. That complete skill set surfaced fully. There were tough moments too. The playoff exit against New York hurt deeply. Kerr admits that leadership comes with scrutiny. Every decision was magnified, every mistake questioned. Scottie faced that alone. Growth sometimes comes through discomfort. Rodman believes that era hardened Scottie mentally. It proved he didn't need Jordan to validate him. He could lead, he could carry, he could dominate in his own style. That confidence followed him into the second 3-P. Steve Kerr often reflects on how the team evolved during that season. Roles shifted, trust deepened. Players realized they could rely on Scottie's voice. That trust remained when Jordan returned. The foundation was stronger. When Michael came back, the narrative shifted again. But Rodman insists that something had changed permanently. Scottie now knew he could survive as the focal point. That awareness altered team dynamics. Respect became internal, not external. Kerr says the Jordanless season is misunderstood. It wasn't failure. It was revelation. It showed Scottie's independence. It showed his endurance. It showed that greatness isn't always loud. Scottie Pippen's era without Michael Jordan stands as proof of his individual legacy. Through the eyes of Dennis Rodman and Steve Kerr, one truth becomes clear. He wasn't built by Jordan's presence. He was revealed by Jordan's absence. Dennis Rodman always said the hardest thing in basketball isn't talent, it's adjustment. When Jordan left, the system had to breathe differently. Scottie became the initiator of everything. The ball moved through his hands first. Decisions rested on his vision. That shift changed the locker room hierarchy overnight. Steve Kerr remembers how defenses began collapsing entirely on Pippen. Double teams came earlier. Traps were more aggressive. There was no Jordan safety valve anymore. Scottie had to read pressure instantly. That responsibility sharpened his playmaking. Rodman admired how Scottie never forced hero basketball. He didn't chase scoring titles to prove independence. He trusted ball movement. He trusted spacing. That restraint made Chicago dangerous in a different way. It became a team-first attack. Kerr often points out that Scottie's conditioning was elite during that era. He played heavy minutes on both ends. Guarding the best scorer every night drains energy. Running the offense drains more. Yet Scottie maintained balance. That stamina defined his leadership. The media constantly compared him to Jordan. Rodman said that shadow never fully disappeared. Every win was labeled temporary. Every loss magnified. Scottie carried that noise quietly. He never publicly cracked. Steve Kerr saw growth in Scottie's communication. He spoke more in huddles. He directed traffic more aggressively. Teammates responded to his voice. Authority felt earned. That season transformed him vocally. Rodman believes the Knicks playoff series revealed Scottie's emotional evolution. The pressure was suffocating. Madison Square Garden was hostile. Every possession mattered. Scottie battled physically and mentally. That fight built resilience. Kerr recalls moments late in games where Scottie controlled tempo deliberately. He slowed possessions when chaos threatened. He attacked mismatches when space opened. That awareness separated him from ordinary stars. He dictated pace. Rodman respected Scottie's defensive pride most during that year. Offense gained headlines, but defense stayed elite. He still guarded the opponent's best threat nightly. That accountability set an example. Leaders defend. First, Steve Kerr believes that without that Jordanless season, the second three-peat looks different. Scottie matured independently. He understood how fragile chemistry can be. When Jordan returned, Scottie wasn't dependent. He was empowered. Rodman said Scottie stopped trying to prove anything after that season. He knew internally what he could do. Validation no longer mattered. That confidence stabilized the Bulls. Quiet certainty replaced doubt. Kerr often says people misinterpret Scottie's calm demeanor. It wasn't passivity. It was calculation. He processed pressure differently than Jordan. He absorbed tension instead of attacking it. That distinction shaped the team's identity. Rodman admired how Scottie handled younger players players seeking direction. He didn't demand loyalty. He earned it. Practices became sharper under his command. Focus tightened. Standards rose. Steve Kerr reflects on how history sometimes compresses narratives unfairly. That season becomes a footnote instead of a chapter. But inside the locker room, it meant everything. It proved Chicago wasn't one-dimensional. It proved Scottie's independence. Dennis Rodman sums it up simply. The era without Michael Jordan didn't weaken Scottie Pippen. It revealed him. It exposed leadership, versatility, and endurance. And when Jordan returned, he wasn't reclaiming a throne. He was joining a foundation Scottie had already strengthened. Dennis Rodman often said that when a superstar leaves, the locker room tests itself. Doubt creeps in quietly. Scottie didn't allow that doubt to grow roots. From the first week of that season, he practiced with urgency. His tone made it clear this wasn't a rebuild. It was a proving ground. Steve Kerr remembers how opponents tried to bait Scottie emotionally. They wanted to see if he would crack without Jordan beside him. Trash talk intensified. Physical defense increased. Scottie rarely reacted outwardly. He answered with execution instead of emotion. Rodman admired how Scottie expanded his offensive creativity that year. He posted up more. He initiated fast breaks himself. He trusted mid-range pull-ups when spacing collapsed. His game stretched beyond its previous limits. That evolution surprised critics. Kerr noted that clutch situations felt different, but not weaker. The ball still found Scottie late. He didn't rush decisions under pressure. He read defenders patiently. Sometimes he scored. Sometimes he created. That unpredictability became his weapon. Dennis Rodman believed that season reshaped how teammates viewed Scottie. Respect became direct, not indirect through Jordan. Players leaned on him instinctively. His voice carried more weight. Leadership stopped being shared. It became defined. Steve Kerr often says that adversity reveals personality. Scottie's personality showed resilience. He didn't seek sympathy for Jordan's absence. He didn't complain about expectations. He accepted the challenge openly. That maturity strengthened team culture. Rodman respected Scottie's defensive sacrifices most. Even while leading offensively, he never hid from the toughest assignment. He guarded elite scorers nightly. That commitment inspired accountability. No one else could slack defensively. Kerr recalls how the 55-win season shocked the league's predictions. Analysts expected collapse. Instead, Chicago thrived. That success forced national conversations. Scottie wasn't just surviving. He was thriving under pressure. Rodman believes that when Jordan returned, Scottie's confidence felt different. It wasn't dependency anymore. It was partnership. He knew his value independently. That knowledge changed the Bulls' internal balance permanently. Steve Kerr sums it up simply. The era without Michael Jordan wasn't a gap in history. It was a statement. Scottie Pippen proved he could lead, defend, create, and endure alone. And that truth remains one of the most underrated chapters in NBA history. Karl Malone was never someone John Stockton or Brian Russell saw as a perfect hero, because behind the dominance and scoring records, there was a personality that could be exhausting to deal with every single day. They both respected how unstoppable he could be on the court, but they also felt his ego and intensity often crossed the line. In their eyes, Malone played like he had something to prove every night, but sometimes it felt like he was proving it against his own teammates too. His attitude during pressure moments made the locker room tense instead of united. To them, greatness didn't always need to come with that level of arrogance. That's where a lot of their quiet resentment started building over the years. Stockton often felt like people only saw Malone's points and never saw how much work he had to do. To keep Malone happy and productive, he ran the offense perfectly, delivered passes exactly where Malone wanted them, and still Malone would complain if one possession didn't go his way. It frustrated Stockton because basketball to him was about precision and trust, not emotional outbursts. He believed Malone sometimes cared more about numbers than winning the right way. Even after huge wins, Malone could still be focused on his own performance. That kind of mindset slowly pushed teammates away emotionally. Brian Russell saw Malone as someone who demanded loyalty but didn't always give it back equally in practice. Malone pushed teammates extremely hard, sometimes crossing into disrespect. Russell believed tough leadership was fine, but humiliation wasn't. There were days when Malone's trash talk felt less like motivation and more like personal attacks. Younger players especially felt pressure around him. Russell respected Malone's work ethic, but hated the fear-based environment he sometimes created. There were moments when Malone's temper made games harder than they needed to be. If referees missed calls, his mood would shift instantly, and the whole team felt it. Stockton hated that emotional swing because it broke team rhythm instead of staying focused. The team sometimes had to manage Malone's frustration. That distraction cost them momentum in critical games. To them, emotional control was part of being truly elite, and Malone sometimes failed there. Both Stockton and Russell believe Malone never fully accepted blame when things went wrong. Losses often turned into finger-pointing moments instead of reflection that created distance inside the locker room. Teammates wanted accountability from their leader. Instead, they often got excuses or silence. That damaged long-term chemistry more than fans ever realized off the court. They felt Malone's personality could be just as difficult. Media attention made him more confident, sometimes to the point of dismissing teammates' contributions. Stockton especially disliked how team success sometimes got framed as Malone carrying everyone. That narrative hurt because basketball was never a one-man sport. It made sacrifices feel invisible. Over time, that built quiet frustration. Russell believed Malone sometimes confused fear with respect. Younger players respected his resume, but didn't always feel comfortable around him. Leadership through intimidation created short-term results, but long-term distance. Russell preferred leaders who inspired instead of pressured. He thought Malone could have been even greater if he balanced dominance with empathy. That missing balance shaped how teammates remembered him. Stockton also believed Malone chased legacy. More than brotherhood, championships required full trust and emotional unity. There were moments when Stockton felt Malone's personal goals overshadowed team needs. That tension showed most in high-pressure playoff moments. When unity cracked, opponents took advantage. Stockton always wondered if things could have been different. Despite all this, both men admitted Malone's talent was undeniable. His strength, durability, and scoring consistency were historic, but greatness to them wasn't just numbers. It was how you made teammates feel when cameras were off. In that area, they believed Malone left mixed memories. That's why their respect never fully turned into admiration. In the end, Stockton and Russell saw Malone as a complicated legend, dominant, historic, but emotionally difficult to stand. Beside every single day, they believed history would remember his points and awards, but teammates would remember the pressure, the intensity, and the emotional weight of playing next to him. To them, he was a force of basketball nature, just not always the easiest force to survive alongside. Stockton sometimes felt Malone treated regular season dominance like it automatically guaranteed playoff success, and that mindset bothered him deeply. He believed postseason basketball demanded humility and adjustment, not just brute force scoring. There were times when defenses clearly figured them out, but Malone resisted changing his approach. That stubbornness frustrated Stockton because he saw solutions developing in real time instead of evolving. Malone often doubled down on what already stopped working. To Stockton, that was pride getting in the way of championships. Russell remembered road games where tension around Malone was almost physical, like you could feel it in the locker room air. If Malone started the game cold, everyone walked on eggshells. Nobody wanted to say the wrong thing or even make eye contact sometimes. That kind of pressure made teammates play tight instead of free. Russell believed confidence spreads, but so does tension, and with Malone, tension could spread faster than confidence. There were practices where Malone's competitiveness turned into something personal, especially when younger players made mistakes. Instead of teaching, he sometimes punished with words. Stockton believed teaching built dynasties, not fear. He tried to balance things quietly behind the scenes, but even he couldn't always smooth over Malone's intensity. That created invisible cracks in team unity over time. Russell also felt Malone measured respect only through performance, not loyalty or effort. If you played well, you were safe. If you struggled, you were ignored or criticized. That kind of environment made players hide weaknesses instead of fixing them. Russell thought real teams grow by supporting struggling teammates. Malone's style made growth harder emotionally. Stockton sometimes wondered if Malone understood how much the offense revolved around him. Every set, every adjustment, every timing decision was designed to maximize Malone's strengths. Yet appreciation from Malone rarely came verbally. Stockton didn't need praise, but recognition matters in long partnerships. The silence slowly built emotional distance. Years of that added up quietly. Russell believed Malone carried a constant chip on his shoulder, even when he was already a superstar. That edge made him dominant, but also made him defensive. If anyone questioned him, even constructively, he reacted like it was disrespect. Russell thought great leaders listened first, then respond. Malone often reacted first and listened later. There were moments when referees became Malone's main focus instead of the game itself. Stockton hated those stretches because momentum disappeared instantly while arguing calls. Opponents ran fast breaks. Those small emotional lapses cost big games sometimes. Stockton valued control, Malone valued expression. That difference shaped How they saw leadership. Russell also noticed Malone struggled with sharing emotional vulnerability. Teammates never really knew when he was stressed or hurt mentally. That made supporting him difficult. Russell believed real brotherhood needed openness sometimes. Malone stayed guarded, almost isolated. That isolation made teammates feel like co-workers instead of family. Stockton believed Malone's legacy could have been even bigger if he trusted teammates more in clutch moments. There were games where double teams came early, but Malone still forced shots. Stockton always stayed ready for return passes. Sometimes they never came. Those mistrust moments defined playoff heartbreaks. Russell thought Malone saw basketball as survival instead of collaboration. Every possession felt like a personal battle to him. That mentality made him unstoppable individually, but team sports required shared emotional space. Russell believed Malone never fully embraced that side. That's why team chemistry always felt slightly incomplete. There were also moments of loyalty from Malone, but they were rare and quiet. Stockton remembered times Malone played through injuries without telling anyone. That toughness inspired teammates. But inspiration alone couldn't replace emotional connection. Leadership needed both. Malone mostly gave one side of that equation. Russell sometimes felt Malone respected opponents more than teammates emotionally. Against rivals, Malone showed fire and focus. With teammates, he expected automatic understanding. Russell thought respect should start inside the locker room. When it doesn't, small resentments grow. Over long seasons, those resentments become permanent. Stockton believed Malone never realized how much teammates adjusted their games for him. Role players sacrificed touches and rhythm. Guards sacrificed scoring opportunities, all to maximize Malone's dominance. Without acknowledgement, sacrifice starts feeling like obligation. That emotional shift changes team culture quietly. Russell also believed media praise made Malone more isolated over time. Constant talk of his greatness built walls around him. Teammates became background characters in public narratives. That disconnect affected locker room reality. Russell thought true legends pulled teammates into their spotlight. Malone sometimes stood alone in it. In the end, both Stockton and Russell saw Malone as a legend built on power, pride, and relentless drive, but also emotional distance. They respected his career, but carried complicated feelings about the journey beside him. To them, Malone was history, dominance, and toughness, but also tension, pressure, and emotional walls. That's why their story with him was never simple. It was greatness mixed with struggle every single season.